I just have to get something, I'll be right back. And he leaves this Valentine's suite, or whatever it was, and he's gone for about 30 minutes. And she's waiting for him, actually for 30 minutes, and he said, "Where is my husband?" And then after like 40 minutes, she puts on a robe or puts something on. She's going around, "Have you seen my husband?" Where, going around the hotel lobby. And then she finds him in the hotel store and looking at a porn magazine. And this is on their wedding night. And he's looking at porn magazines. And actually Douglas Weiss says that these men they're dual focused. They may have some attraction to their wife, but they have a strong addiction to pornography. So let's talk about this for a second. First, sexual experiences imprinted on the brain. Now, if you wait till marriage, then who is your brain imprinting on? The person you just married to. That's a good thing, right? Right? You're imprinting on the woman that you just got married to, and she becomes the definition of what is sexually attractive to you. However, if you do not wait until marriage, then the brain imprints on other people who were not committed to you. How committed was that the women in the porn magazine? How committed are the pictures to you? Are they committed to you? No, they don't. They're not even. They're pictures. Okay, they probably never meet you, and you're getting bonded. Your brain is getting attached to those images. So, it's interesting. The Bible is this, we have this image of this Bible is this superstitious relic, or this relic of superstition that has no relevance to the modern world, and now we discover, guess what? The commandment is the commandment not to eat of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, to not experience unmarried sex. Is the commandment relevant or not? To human happiness? I want to take a vote right now. Raise your hand if you think it's relevant. I want to see your hand. Okay, it is extremely relevant, regardless of whether you believe in the Bible or not. And I really want to make this point clear. To me, truth is truth. And whether it's expressed in biblical terms or from a scientific study, truth is truth. Okay. So we have stages of intimacy and love. We're born from the sexual union of our parents. Hopefully they had a decent amount of love to give us. We become older. We learn to share a little bit as brothers and sisters and with friends. And then we become teenagers and we're attracted. We may even have crushes and fall in love a few times. Now what happens if we experience sexual union at this stage in our lives? Well, we might create a child, right? Well, what kind of love do we have to give to that child? Immature, very immature, right? You're still growing. You're still trying to figure out who you are. So wouldn't it be better to mature our love, make that marital promise so that when we do become parents, we have mature love to give to our children? And we're actually looking at two cycles here. One is a mature cycle, and then there's this, it's like a short circuit. Uncommitted sex is like a short circuit that destroys a healthy family. And we see this all over the world. There are three risk factors for child poverty in the United States. Out of wedlock birth, a mother who was a teenager, like the biblical Eve, when she had her first child, and a mother who didn't finish high school. I don't think there was high school back in the Garden of Eden, but she was immature. She needed to study more. Now, if children do not have any of these risk factors, they have a less than 10% risk of being in poverty in America today. However, if they have all three of these risk factors, It's almost guaranteed. 8 out of 10 of them live in poverty in America today. So is the fall of man relevant to the real world? Yes. Now, our media, America has the most powerful media machine in the world. Now, what kind of message does this media machine send out for the most part? Well, we have the marketing of rebellion, so-called rebellion, and where rebellion is just another, so-called rebellion is just another product to be marketed and sold right back to you. And this rebellion reminds me of what Lucifer said to Eve. You know, God said, don't do this, but actually, He doesn't have your true interests at heart. God is trying to hide maturity to you. If you go with me and break that commandment, your eyes will be opened and you can reach actually sexual awareness is actually what he, right? So, yeah, so we have the media machine. I actually had to redesign this cover because this cover was actually much more explicit than I'm showing here. I didn't want to quite go that far, but you can get an idea of what's being said there. Now, it's not just a media problem. Actually, when you look at international organizations which receive huge amounts of funding from our government and from the United Nations, you'll be amazed at what kind of messages they want to promote all over the world. So let's look at this. Yeah, the International Planned Parenthood Federation Youth Manifesto, goal number 3, you can look it up. Young people must be encouraged to know their sexual rights. Society must recognize the right of all young people to enjoy sex. Okay. Society must recognize the right of all young people to become depressed and suicidal, is what they should be saying, they're actually saying. Okay. Now, our State Department under Hillary Clinton was going around at the United Nations threatening more conservative countries from Africa and the Middle East and saying, if you want any federal aid, foreign aid from our government, we want you to accept this platform of youth sexual rights and gay rights. And if you don't, we will cut off the millions of dollars that we're giving you. From our perspective, you know, hey, for American, you know, in terms of our government spending, these millions are like spare change. I mean, we know, in our budget, even billions are no longer, we're into the trillions of spending now. So the millions might seem like almost nothing to us. But to these poor African countries, it actually means a lot. And there is one country, I'll just mention quickly, there's the country of Uganda that had 15% of their national population were infected with the AIDS virus in the early 1990s. And their new president, President Museveni, actually their government, he was seen as a rebel leader. The U.S. did not trust him. There were no American experts there to advise him how to deal with thank God, there were no American experts to advise him about how to prevent the spread of AIDS. There were no funding for condom distribution. He got on national television with his wife, and he said to his whole country, our country has an existential threat. If we don't deal with this AIDS problem, we're gonna die, basically, he said. And so he said, there are 3 things that I want our whole country to do. It's called ABC. A means to young people, if you have not had sex yet, don't. Wait, abstain from sex. This is not your time. And then B was to the older couples who are being sexually active with each other. B means be faithful to each other. Do not have other partners. And then there's a small c, which was if you're too dumb to do A or B, and you're going to go to a prostitute or something, then you better use a condom. All right. Now that is not the message that we're funding all over the world. However, within 10 years, Uganda was the only country in the world to achieve this, they cut their AIDS infection rate from 15% to 5% within 10 years. That's the good news, okay? And they got all the government ministers, he said, I don't care what department you're the Minister of Agriculture, you have to talk about this. If you're the Minister of War or Defense, you have to talk about this too. Actually, he got the religious groups involved and all the social groups involved in the country. Now this is a great story, except the ending is not good. Because the US government and the United Nations came back to Uganda and said, oh, well, it's interesting what you've done here, but actually we don't like your approach. And if you want to receive foreign aid from us, then you need to add more conversation about condoms. So unfortunately in Uganda, they have a lot of condom education now and billboards, and their infection rate actually has gone back up. Okay? So is America a good country? I don't know, but I'm not sure. Actually, that's a serious question we really have to think about. This is a curriculum used in many states all over, many schools all over the United States. This is actually, the example is from a program here in New Jersey. It's called the Teen Pep Program, which was out of Princeton. Sorry about that, Bob, but it's a group in Princeton. They're very smart people there. They're very clever and ingenious. But actually, this was developed by Planned Parenthood of Northern New Jersey, where I live, so I guess I should feel ashamed too. This activity is called What is an Abstinence Anyway? What is that? What is an abstinence? Okay, it's a strange question to ask. And these are activities by 9th graders, by the way. This is used by 9th graders here by this program. Imagine that someone has decided to be abstinent. According to your own definition of abstinence, circle the following behaviors that you believe a person engage in and still be abstinent. And the guidance given here, by the way, is abstinence does not have to mean a lack of sensuality or eroticism. And again, the emphasis of these kinds of curricula are preventing pregnancy and preventing the spread of a disease. So they're looking at it from a very utilitarian approach. Okay. Now, look at the suggested behaviors. Mutual masturbation, cuddling naked. Do those things, does cuddling naked cause pregnancy? Okay. Taking a shower together, isn't that your favorite abstinence activity that we all love to do? Watching porn videos. Can you see where a young person might become a little bit confused about what the word abstinence means? Yes. Yeah. And now maybe you could see why in their handbook they said something which at first I said, how could they possibly say that? They said the typical user effectiveness rate of abstinence is 75%. And I said, how can they say that it has a 25% failure rate? But now when I know what their definition of abstinence is, means taking a shower with your girlfriend, now I understand why it has a failure rate, because of what happens after the shower, right? Exactly. So let me just put it just really bluntly. Satan is already in the classroom. Satan is already in the curriculum. And I think we really need to wake up. Because, you know, I really, to me, it breaks my heart. I actually struggle whenever there's a Divine Principle workshop, because I struggle whether I want to go to that. Sure. Actually. Because I think we are talking about a deep biblical interpretation, but we're not equipping people when they leave the conference to fight Satan in their school, fight Satan in the classroom. And I told this to Hyunjin and Yonim actually last Tuesday, actually, because We believe that divine principle is just a theological interpretation of the Bible, which, you know, there are many interpretations of the Bible, and we share that with the ministers, and they hopefully are inspired by it or not. Actually, I think we need to make it clear to them how Satan is working today. And we think it's obvious, and I don't believe it's obvious. I mean, if it were obvious, then we would be doing a lot more in the community to enroll people on the side of godly, true love. And actually, I have a few slides which show that people who do follow the commandment, who do wait till marriage and are faithful in marriage, they have better sex. They enjoy it more. The ones who have more than one sexual partner, they're depressed. I'm talking about even adult women, they're depressed. Married women are more likely to report that sex makes them feel loved, wanted, and taken care of. They're less likely to report that sex made them feel anxious, scared, or guilty. Men who marry as virgins are 37% less likely to get divorced. The earlier the young men initiate premarital sex, and the more partners they have, the more likely to be unfaithful in marriage. Don't you think young people should be taught this? And the adults should be taught this too? Don't you think this should be part of our divine principle lecture?
Yeah, that's right.
I do. Women who marry as virgins are 24% less likely to get divorced. Premarital sex with just one partner other than their husband raised their risk of divorce by 3 times. Okay, so that's the... Actually, I don't know if I have time for the video or not. Do it. Okay, I'll stop here, but I just... I hope you get my point. I really believe we need to re-examine if a principle-driven leadership seminar, I think we cannot just use a traditional divine principle approach. I think we have to mix it up. Thank you.
What I'd like to share with you was the first lecture I heard in the Divine Principle in 1974. And the story was, I'd gone to Ohio State at a music scholarship, and for 2 years I was studying there, and then for 3 years I left school and was playing professionally in bands, rock groups, jazz groups. I was composing, arranging, something I really wanted to do. I really loved classical music, but I also grew up loving jazz and rock music. And after 3 years, I decided to go back to school. And right around that time, like 1972 or so, a friend of mine, 2 friends of mine had gotten married. And we thought that they're the ideal couple. But within a year, they were divorced. And so we were kind of puzzled by that, because their friends thought this was just a great couple, right? So one day, the girl from the couple called me and said, "David, you know, I've been going to Bible studies classes, and I'm learning so many things, and it's so therapeutic and healing. And I just have to tell you, we learned today that Jesus is coming back in 3 years. We've got to get ready." So really? Okay. Anyway, at the time, I wasn't so religious. I grew up in the Catholic family and went to Catholic elementary school, but by the time I was in college, music was my religion, you know. Beethoven was the Messiah, and the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and all these other groups, they were the apostles spreading the word, you know, so. But I have to say that conversation somehow stuck with me, that I began to think, and it was kind of curious. I really began to wonder, if Jesus is coming in 3 years, that's just 1975, then what does my life mean? What does my music mean? Will I get married? How's that all going to work out? Will I have a family? So I have to say, I was really spiritually somehow moved by this idea, this concept. And I I went back to school at Ohio State in 1973, and then the day before classes were going to start in 1974, I met this young German girl who came up to me, and she had these buttons of Reverend Moon's picture on her, right? And she said, "Do you believe in God?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I do believe in God." Because even though I wasn't religious, I believed in God, and I did believe that Jesus was a real guy, that he was around 2,000 years ago, and he had a lot of good things to teach us. So I went to a lecture, and the first lecture I heard, introductory lecture, was what Bob talked about in the beginning, about the 3 blessings from the Bible, God's blueprint for mankind. You know, be fruitful, the first blessing, multiply, the second blessing, have dominion over creation, the third blessing, as explained in Genesis. The second part of the lecture was how God was carrying out that plan. And, and what the lecturer taught was the last 4,000 years of human history from the biblical perspective, which led us to the point that, hey, we actually may be living in the time where the Christ is on the earth. That was my first lecture. And when I saw this, I went, whoa. You know, it was like I had this aha moment, you know. So that began my course in the church and a certain transformation, because in 1972, that was me. In my rock and roll days. As my daughter said, "Cool pants, Dad." And she said, "You mean when you were young, people dressed like pirates?" I said, "Yeah." But a few years later, I was this guy with Father and Mother Moon. I was the conductor of the New York City Symphony. Before, after, before, after. So how powerful is this teaching? How powerful is it? Well, for me, it was really powerful, and it really did change my life. So what I want to share with you is a bit about the history of restoration and how God has literally been working through history to bring about the kingdom of heaven. So this is actually section 6 in the principle OSDP, dealing with the second advent. And in divine principle, there's a concept that salvation, our salvation, equals restoration. That God was working not only to save us, but to restore the original ideal of creation that Bob Beebe talked about. And then Richard Panzer showed us how it all went wrong. But God did not give up on human history or humanity, continued to work. So what I'm going to share with you is what we call in the principle the dispensational time identity. And the second coming is actually the third attempt to realize the kingdom of heaven on earth. Matthew, the Lord's Prayer, Matthew 6:9. "Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven," right? So God wanted to restore or bring the original ideal of before the fall, Adam and Eve, to fruition, first through Jesus, but when that didn't happen, he set up an alternative plan of restoration to bring that back. And the Messiah, in Timothy 2:5, we read, is the mediator, the anointed one, the mediator between God and fallen man. And I always remember hearing that the word religion stems from the Latin word lego ligare, which means to bind together. Your ligament, right? Lego is a binding thing. So religion is rebinding God and man. So there's an implication there, right? That at one point, God and man were united. They fell apart. There had to be a rebinding, hence religion, lego ligare. Okay, so there was a biblical perspective in history that we're going to go through here. At the time of Jesus, there was a popular expectation that Jesus would come on the clouds, right? We learn about that in the Bible. But what happened? Jesus did not come on the clouds. He was born of a woman. There was also an expectation that he would come basically like Elijah, or that someone like Elijah would come. But we learned from the Bible that, in fact, it was John the Baptist who came in the spirit and power of Elijah as the precursor to Jesus' coming. So the prophecy, there was a literal kind of expectation, but in fact there were many symbolic things going on, right? Now in the second coming, we have a similar situation. There is a popular expectation that the second coming, where Christ will come on the clouds and everyone shall know him and every knee shall bow down, right? But he may come the same as Jesus. not on the clouds, but born of a woman. So the prophecy may not be literal, but in fact symbolic, okay? So the predictions for the first coming of Jesus. Coming on the clouds, this is from Daniel 7:13. I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven. But in Isaiah, there's another prophecy. Therefore the Lord himself shall give you a sign. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. Dual prophecy, right? One literal, one symbolic. So in what manner was Christ to return? So there's the prophecy that he would come on the clouds. Revelation, this is the second coming. Behold, he come with clouds, and every eye shall see him. They will also which pierced him, and all kindreds of the earth shall